composition for you?
Geometry.
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 Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Tavis Leaf Glover, and today we're going to be going through some of Henri Cartier-Bresson's photos, and we'll see how he applied dynamic symmetry and design techniques to his photos. So here he is with his Leica camera ready to go to work, and then on the right we can see him filming one of his movies. But let's go through some of his photos. So in this first one, we've got a couple different things going on. The first one that you might notice is the way he's using the grid. He loved geometry, and geometry is dynamic symmetry. So we can see him paralleling the grid. He's noticing the diagonals in this scene, especially this dominant diagonal in the booth behind this man, and then his arm, and then we can see how they're paralleling the grid. This is the sinister diagonal, and we've got a couple of diagonals paralleling the grid. Not this long one behind him, but in the last video I mentioned how important diagonals are and how they can make the scene more dynamic rather than straight horizontals and verticals. So check that out if you didn't get a chance. Another thing we have is coincidences. He may have noticed this guy's arm is coinciding with this man's arm, and he may have noticed both diagonals. Like I said, he's obsessed with geometry. So when you study these techniques and you're familiar with dynamic symmetry, you can sidestep to the right and you can create coincidences like this and create more unity and movement between the two subjects. So he's uniting these two guys even though they probably don't even know each other. And then the last one is a bit of surrealism. The way this guy's hunched over and sleeping, it's coinciding with this background element, and then there's low contrast here, which makes those two objects blend together, so it looks like his back is kind of like a hunchback or something like that. So that was an interesting photo. And also all of these are analyzed on the site, so if you're a MasterPass member you can log in and view the full article and commentary. So this next image, we could see some things going on here. We've got aerial perspective, so in the background we've got the contrast reducing with the Eiffel Tower in the distance there, so we've got nice depth. Also got nice figure ground relationship, so he's positioning himself so he fits these people's heads in this little pocket of negative space here with the water, so we can clearly define them a little bit easier. He's creating visual clarity rather than the most important part of their body coinciding with something random. If they wanted to, they could even like dodge and burn this area so her head pops out even more, and it looks like they may have, if we zoom in, looks like they may have dodged just a little bit just to create a little bit of lightness to the left of her head so her hair pops out. Nothing too obvious, just keeping it subtle. We've also got paralleling diagonals. If we put the 1.5 grid on there, we can see that this diagonal here is paralleling the reciprocal diagonal, and then the diagonals in the bodies are paralleling the Baroque diagonal and then the sinister diagonal. This one has some interesting things to note about it. It's got the law of similarity, so that's a Gestalt psychology principle, and what happens is when things are similar, they're kind of automatically unified. The mind unifies them even though they may be separate from each other. But these gentlemen in the hat, they're similar because they have the same hat on, and they're different from these people who don't have that type of hat on. So these people are grouped together, and then these guys are grouped together. Even though they're separated, they're grouped together and unified because of that hat. We've also got aerial perspective in this one. See how we've got nice depth going back into the background here. Things are reducing in contrast. And then there's a bit of surrealism. Henri Cartier-Bresson hung out with a lot of surrealists, and he also considered himself a surrealist.
Absolutely.
So he loves surrealism, and right here he's having this guy stand on the edge of the frame, and he's got an aspect of view. The limbs are spread in his legs here, and if we're looking at the story, it almost looks like this guy is the leader. He's standing in front of everybody. Everybody's looking at him. He's got the different hat on, looks like a leader. He's separate from them. So he's creating a story there that probably doesn't even exist, because if we look even closer, we can see like people are smiling in the foreground here. Everybody's smiling. But at a glance, it looks like he's almost like a dictator. All right, here's another one with the boy climbing on these busted up cars. Looks like there was an explosion or something with the smoke in the background. So if we put the grid on there, we've got paralleling diagonals. These two are paralleling the reciprocal diagonal there. And this one also, he's locking into that diagonal on the right side, and then this one's paralleling the Baroque diagonal. We've got aerial perspective, of course. When you add smoke into a scene, it reduces the contrast and creates the potential for adding more depth in the scene. So we've got nice aerial perspective. These two are balancing each other. It's a nice counterpart from left to right, and then they've got nice figure-ground relationship. Dark figures on a light background, and if you look at this closely, you can see that they probably burned some of these areas. They're really solid black compared to the lighting of this scene, and that's probably because they're trying to pop this off the background, and perhaps this wasn't as reduced in contrast as it's seen here. Perhaps they lightened this area. So lighten this area, darken this area, and this object pops off the background better. Same with this guy. So if you're liking this kind of content, I've got tons of other videos, plus there's links in the description below. I make videos, books, grids, all to help artists surpass their plateau and reach the master level. So be sure to check that out if you can. And all of it helps support the site and keeps the content flowing, so I really appreciate that. This one was interesting. Got several different techniques going on in here. And what was really cool is if you look very closely, he's all about the decisive moment. And he caught this woman's foot almost as it's about to touch. Kind of like the man jumping over the puddle. It's almost touching, so it creates a little bit of visual tension if you catch that detail. It's kind of a nice little added bonus there.
Sensitivity, the flavor.
But we could see he's reducing the contrast, and some of that could have been from the dodging and burning in the darkroom. Not that he did his own photo editing, but whoever's editing his negatives are manipulating this to get the best figure-ground relationship. But we can see how the background is reduced in contrast, and that's the aerial perspective. Nice figure-ground relationship. She's not overlapping with other shapes in the foreground. She's clearly defined against the background. And then the law of similarity again. So everybody's wearing kind of a long dress, but all these guys are grouped together because they're wearing a similar outfit that is different than hers. So not that these are dresses, but it's their outfit, and they're all similar compared to hers. So they're grouped together, our mind groups them together, and they separate her from the group. That's the Gestalt psychology. This one, we have very cool echoing shapes here. This large subject in the background is echoing the shape of this man in the foreground. We've also got size variation. He's playing with the size variation here. We've got large, medium, and small, and they also have nice figure-ground relationship. So even this dark hat is not colliding with the background elements here. So we're clearly defined pretty much. This guy, if they have the chance to dodge and burn his jacket or the background, they might pop him off the background a little bit better, and perhaps they lighten this area here. But if they wanted to pop him off the background more, they could have lightened it without it looking too fake. You don't want it to look obvious. This is another interesting photo. He's definitely capturing some geometric shapes here in the shadows. He's got this square. He's got these oval shapes, rectangular shapes in the shadows, and then this one up here combined with the shadows creating an oval shape. He's also got surrealism like the last one. He's capturing this guy on the very edge of the frame, and this isn't considered edge flicker. Edge flicker is when you have high contrast near the edge that distracts from the main subject, but this guy is adding to the story, and he's part of the main subject, and his gaze is going inward towards these geometric shapes here. So it's all adding to his story that he's creating. Plus they have aspect of view. This guy's legs are spread. This guy is walking here, and then if you zoom in really close, you can see this person's body, their legs are spread apart, and then this person. All that helps us identify them as people walking, and if we look close, we can't tell if this is like maybe someone sitting down, maybe this is someone sitting down, you know, or standing up. It's not as easy to identify when it's not an aspect of view and you're dealing with silhouettes and simple shapes like that. Alright, so that's it for this one. Be sure to comment below if you like this kind of stuff. Let me know other artists you might be interested in. But until the next one, I'll talk to you later.
A remarkable.
Don't exaggerate it.
Thank you for
We
joining us.
enjoyed talking together.
Whatever.
Thank you. Oh, merci.
Ah.
Salute.
Salute.